My name is Josh Breslow, and we do continue to follow this breaking news here as we continue to bring you the latest on this verdict that has now been reached by the jury. They took just several hours to deliberate. A jury finding Trump liable Tuesday for sexually abusing advice columnist E. Jean Carroll back in 1996, awarding her $5 million in a judgment that, of course, is all happening as we do see him campaigning to regain the White House. The verdict was announced in a federal courtroom in New York City on the first day of jury deliberations. Jurors rejecting Carroll's claims that she was raped, but found Trump liable for sexually abusing her. I do want to bring in Andrew Lieb here with Lieb at Law. He is a legal analyst to help break this down for us. And Andrew, I know this has been ongoing, but are you surprised with the outcome here?
Yeah, I probably would have bet that he wasn't going to lose this case. And the reason why I was betting that is that Miss Carroll couldn't identify the date, time, or location that any of these alleged batteries or rapes occurred. So without that, how are we supposed to disprove it, as Trump's lawyer accurately stated? That said, you see, I think that the Carroll team did a terrific job, both on their summation and their rebuttal, pointing out that Access Hollywood video and how Trump doubled down in depositions. You see, when you don't testify at a case as a defendant, that doesn't mean your voice doesn't get shown. They recorded the depositions, and that was what was before the jury. And I'm willing to bet, although I have no basis to know this, that the fact that Donald Trump said such egregious things about grabbing the women and he doubled down on it, that's probably why we're seeing this $5 million verdict today.
Yeah, and that's a very high number. Of course, we weren't sure just yet. It sounded at first like it was going to be possibly $2 million, and then it did kind of jump up to $5 million there. Are you surprised that President Trump did not show up there to actually testify, and there was just kind of his statements that had been made prior to that, and he's, of course, been posting on Truth Social?
What I'm surprised about the most is how free-flowing he was at the deposition. Trump is generally a guy that will not give straight answers, or in a deposition take a lot of privilege and say, I don't want to take the fifth or whatever else. But he had these rambling answers that I think really came back to bite him. First, he said that Carroll wasn't his type, but then he likened her to his wife. He thought it was Maples. He thought it was his wife at the deposition. And see, had he not said anything at the deposition, not testifying, I think, would have been smart. But because they could introduce that deposition testimony, I am shocked he didn't testify, particularly when he was over in Europe and he said he was coming back to testify. The judge gave him till Sunday to reopen the case, and he still didn't do it. That's what I'm surprised about.
Do you think that this outcome is going to affect any of the other cases against him? We know there are some criminal federal cases, this one, of course, civil. Could this have any sort of impact on the criminal cases?
Only one small sliver, I think. Trump announced today that he was going to appeal this ruling even before it came out about the unconstitutional silencing of him. And we all know, I think we know, that in the New York case about the hush money with Stormy Daniels and about the business records, the falsifying business records to be exact, the judge in that case has put a gag order, a partial gag order, on Trump speaking about discovery. And I think those two issues could be relevant to one another. But as to substance, this has no bearing on a criminal case, and none of those other cases are about whether he raped anyone, which, by the way, he was found not to have done by a more likely than not sexual battery, which he was found to have done, or even the defamation, those malicious false statements. I don't think it has a relevancy in substance, but it might embolden a prosecutor to go for it. When you smell blood in the water, they say in Legally Blonde, an attorney's going for it.
So do you think, because we were actually waiting to hear comments here from Trump's legal team, it looks like the shot, as you saw there, just kind of dumped out as we do have a podium set up. Do you think they're going to make fairly brief comments, not talk at all, or where do you think this is going next?
I think Trump's lawyer has been doing it in a limited statement. He hasn't been doing so much, and a lot of people have criticized how he did the case. I don't know if it was good or bad. Trump is such a volatile client to have. I feel bad for him that he's doing it. I think where it's going next, no one knows. Even the judge and Trump's lawyer, he made, I'm paraphrasing, it was caught on the record, you know what I have to deal with, he said something like that to the judge when asked if Trump was going to come. Trump is driving this train. So I think the best way to know what's going to happen next is pay attention to Truth Social, and that's where we get our interactive media. This is the best TV show in town. We get it on the news, we get it live, and we get commentary by Trump on Truth Social.
And I believe he's already started posting about this verdict as it did come down there. As far as the situation itself, one thing that stood out to me is when they were making the closing arguments, Trump's attorney was telling the jurors that Carroll had made this up based on an episode of Law and Order where a woman is raped in the dressing room of the lingerie section of Bergdorf Goodman, which of course is exactly what Carroll is saying happened to her there. Kind of an interesting side note that was kind of brought out there. Do you think that had the potential to really sway the jury?
Not really. I think it's interesting, if you're a fan of The Simpsons, how much of what happened with Trump's presidency was foreshadowed from The Simpsons. You can't base reality on fiction TV. I think Trump's best defense, and I think his attorney did say it, is the fact that we didn't know the day or time or exact location of everything happening. And without doing that, how could Trump prove a negative? I thought that was his best defense. But circumstantial evidence was so overwhelming on the plaintiff's behalf. We had other people that allegedly had sexual battery from him showing a pattern. We had 2 contemporaneous talkings where she told her friends and reported it. We had a therapist testifying about it. We had that Access Hollywood video that I talked about before. And again, I think the most damning of it all is Trump's deposition was a disaster. And it's a good reminder for all attorneys or litigants out there that you need not call up your adversary. Just play the video from the deposition. And they really locked him in and locked him cold on that deposition.
Do you think this verdict opens a door, opens a window to more lawsuits against Trump when it comes to things of this nature, to sexual battery?
I'm going to tell you from a different perspective. I don't know if it's just Trump. You see, in New York, they created this new law for both child victims and adults where they reopened the statute of limitations for people that previously were outside the statute of limitations. And New York happens to be one of the most protective states in the country. And I think that this case, not about Trump necessarily, but victims overall. If you've been a victim of sexual harassment, sexual battery, sexual assault, conduct, rape, you should be emboldened by this to say, the person that wronged me, maybe it wasn't last year, I'm going to do something about it, and I'm not going to sit quietly and be a victim anymore. And I think that's really the message here. That victims, when they speak up, can get redressed, they can get their voice heard, and they can feel better about themselves moving forward being heard.
All right, right now we're waiting, of course, for Trump's legal team to come out. We did see E. Jean Carroll walk the other direction. She did not approach the podium, make any comments like that. But his legal team is expected to walk up to the podium there and start speaking any moment. Andrew Lieb with Lieb at Law, thank you so much as always for taking the time to join us here. Is there anything else that you want to add before I let you go?
Well, I'm just excited to see what his legal team says, because I don't think this is the end of the show. I think knowing Trump will probably have an appeal here, and I think that this is going to continue going forward in all different fashions because Trump is not going to let it go. So if you want to be entertained, go on Truth Social and see what he has to say next.
All right. Thank you again for taking the time here to join us.
Thank you.